Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Doug. And it's really a deep honor to be here at the University of South Carolina to talk with you about the future of the U.S. economy. And I just want to say that they're still counting the votes, as far as I understand. So we'll see. But no, I did run because I thought that it was important for somebody to provide some content, some substance to this whole discussion about where the country is and where it's going to go, or where it should go, how to fix our problems. Somebody who is not partisan. I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I did work in the Reagan administration, but I didn't vote for President Reagan at the time. I just thought that the country needed some, well, I was at New Haven at the time, and I also wanted to get a date, and you can't do it in New Haven. So I had ulterior motives, but I also wanted to get the experience of working at the Council of Economic Advisors, and that was quite an experience, and so I'm glad I did that. But the country today, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of where we are in terms of the economic realities, and then talk about the policies that President-elect Trump has in mind. Yeah, it's hard to wrap your brain around this a little bit. We're also geared towards having Clinton as the president. I think she would have been dangerous in a different way than Trump, but also dangerous. But I'm going to try and tell you what I think he has in mind doing from everything I can glean, and then contrast that with what needs to be done. I'm going to try and do all of this in about a half an hour or so that I can have some time, about 15 minutes for Q&A, and Doug's going to keep me to good behavior here. So what are the implications of President-elect Trump's for the U.S. economy? Well, let's look at the background. So what you see here is a picture of growth rates. You know, they were negative in the Great Depression and positive, and then, but they've been basically heading downhill. So our growth rates have been quite low for quite, it's really a downhill decline. Part of this is demographic, that our population growth rate has slowed up. Part of it is education. We're not educating our children as well as we used to. Part of this is competition from abroad with low-wage countries. Part of this is the automation of industry and other kinds of jobs. There's hardly any job you can think of, from bombing our enemies to rubbing our backs, that a machine can't do these days. So we have these huge factories being set up with very few people to work there. It's just robots. And part of this, of course, is immigration. We've had a lot of discussion of illegal immigration, but over the last decade, about 100,000 illegal immigrants more have left the country than have come. So our net flow of illegal immigrants is actually negative. So if you put a wall up, you're going to keep the illegal immigrants from leaving. So I hope that when we put the wall up, we'll have a door and a red carpet so that the ones who want to leave can leave. But the real issue is legal immigration. We've been bringing in over 1 million people a year. If we continue doing this for the next 45 years, we will increase the population by 100 million people. That's the population of the Philippines. Imagine bringing the entire Filipino population to the United States today and planting them in the U.S. in proportion where they are now. But of course, they would tend to migrate to the cities. So in Boston, you can hardly drive in many parts of the day. And at some point, the traffic would become very similar to what it is in Manila, where it takes about 2 hours to go 1 mile, because I've actually experienced that. So we're making no preparations. We're putting a lot of downward pressure on the wages of low and medium-skilled people with all the immigration. We're not really thinking about how many immigrants we want to have in the country and what their skill composition should be. That should have been discussed by somebody in the debate. Not the illegal immigrants, but the legal immigrants. And now maybe I missed it, but anyway, low growth, slow job recovery. We're still about 1.7% lower employment to population ratio than we should have based on just the demographics and the trends, which would be the blue line. So we have some underutilization of the workforce. A lot of people are disgruntled. They can't find jobs. They've dropped out of the workforce. They're not being counted among the unemployed when you look at the standard statistics. You have median household income has been declining despite overall labor productivity growth. This is reflecting to some degree the increase in inequality, that people at the top are making a whole lot more and people at the bottom are not. But in addition, some of the productivity is really reflective of the extra automation that's going on, the fact that robots are counted as capital, but they're getting a bigger share of the pie, capital in general, compared to labor. So the labor share has in recent years been declining. So that's a concern, and where will that go? You know, when we get to the point where everybody's laid off by the robots and put out of jobs, who's going to be around to buy the products that the robots are making? So I did a paper with Jeffrey Sachs and a couple of grad students. It's at my website, Kotlikoff.net. If you look under articles at Kotlikoff.net, you can see a paper called Robots Are Us. It's a little model. It's got a little bit of mathematics, not too complicated for economists, but maybe for laymen. But you can just read the words and see that this is a very simple bread and butter model that shows that in the long run, the robots can make everybody worse off. We can end up with better technology, but because nobody's had enough wages to save out of, they don't accumulate enough physical capital. We end up in the long run with better technology but less physical capital, and everybody actually is worse off. That could happen. So we have to be talking and discussing and thinking about how do we respond to this new situation where robots can drive our cars and our trucks, and just there they can put 7% of the workforce out of business because 7% of our workforce is involved in transportation. They can also drive our airplanes at this point, fly our airplanes. So I'm going to bum you out. This is what economists do, you know. We're dismal people, we're dismal scientists, and that seems to be what we get paid to do, to get people depressed. But we have a lot of ammunition. Here's real wages, and they've been stagnating since about 1965. They're not a whole lot higher. Average hourly earnings of production and non-supervisory employees, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in real dollars, inflation adjusted, have not risen for decades. This is really a picture of the end of the American dream right there. If you want to ask where's the American dream, it's dead, and it's right there in that picture. The real wages haven't gone up for many different reasons. I already named some of them. But this is take-home pay. If you include fringe benefits, there has been growth in real compensation. But most of this fringe benefit is really an employer paying a whole lot more for the same health care that you were otherwise going to get. And our health care outcomes are rather dismal relative to those of countries that are spending a whole lot less. So I wish I could say the fringe benefits were actually delivering something besides higher pay to hospital or hospital network CEOs, which seems to be, well, wait a second, Blue Cross. Everybody but Blue Cross. Sorry. I take it back. Sorry, Blue Cross. I'm in Blue Cross. I love Blue Cross. Okay. Saving and investment. Peter was just referencing saving and investment. This is a picture of net national saving, net domestic investment. I wish Hillary had presented this picture and had talked about it in the campaign. I wish Donald had done that. I wish anybody, Ted, any of these guys had actually talked once about substance, about anything. And here's our national saving rate, which was 15% or so, 16% in 1950. It's now down to 4%. That's the blue curve. Our domestic investment rate has come right down with it. The gap between the two curves is our current account deficit, how much investment we're getting from abroad coming into the U.S., and that's been reduced of late. So we were depending a lot on foreigners investing in the U.S. They've decided to invest other places. And so our domestic investment rate is also down to around 4%. So that's a picture right there of failure. Now, when you save less, you invest less. So if you're investing less, you have to be saving less. So if you're saving less, you have to be spending less. So then the question is, who's spending so much more? Maybe the government is spending a whole lot more on the military, on salaries for the president, for members of Congress. Maybe it's engaged in a lot more infrastructure spending. I don't know. It's not the case. What's happened is that government spending accounts for about 1 percentage point of the about 11 percentage point decline in national saving from 15% down to 4%. The other 10 percentage points is due to higher household consumption. And then we have to ask, who is it within the household sector who's been consuming so much more? Well, I'm going to show you the answer.